Dad's silent revenge.
How's it feel to be the man everyone hates? Patricia sneered at me across my own dining room table. Her phone pointed right at my face like she was filming some kind of social media content. I set down my coffee mug, looked her dead in the eye, and smiled. How's it feel to know you're homeless starting today? The room went dead silent. Her little smirk disappeared real quick. Gerald Hoffman, 58 years old, and I've been dealing with this woman's garbage for 5 years. Time to tell you how I got my house back. It all started in October when I found my late wife's wedding photos thrown in the trash. Not misplaced, not accidentally knocked over. Deliberately thrown away like garbage. These weren't sitting on some counter where they might have gotten swept up by mistake. Someone had climbed up to the top shelf at the spare bedroom closet, pulled down that old shoebox, and decided my 30 years of marriage belonged in the dumpster. I stood in my Phoenix driveway that evening, holding pieces of broken glass with Sarah's face smiling behind the cracks. My first wife, dead 15 years now. The woman who helped me raise my son Leonard when I was working 60-hour weeks running construction crews all over the valley. The woman who never complained when I came home covered in dust and concrete, who had dinner ready at 7 p.m., sharp every night for 3 decades. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't spring cleaning gone wrong. This was Patricia making a statement about who belonged in this house and who didn't. See, 5 years ago, when Leonard's first wife died in that car wreck on the I-10, I wanted to help him get back on his feet. The man was destroyed, lost his job, could barely function, had medical bills piling up from trying to save her. So, I did what any father would do. I signed over the deed to this house, the house I'd bought with 32 years of construction wages, every overtime check, every weekend side job, laying tile or fixing someone's plumbing. I kept lifetime residence, rights, all legal and proper. My attorney made sure of that. I figured we were family. I figured blood meant something. I figured wrong. Patricia, his new wife, had different plans for my house, and apparently different plans for me. The morning after I found those photos, in the kitchen making breakfast when she walks in. Now, I've been cooking breakfast for construction crews of 20 hungry men for 3 decades. I know my way around eggs and bacon, but Patricia takes one look at my plate and says, "Gerald, maybe you should eat less. At your age, metabolism slows down. You don't burn calories like you used to." Leonard's sitting right there at the table, scrolling through his phone like nothing happened. Doesn't even look up. Just lets her comment sit there in the air like a bad smell. I'm standing there with my spatula, thinking about all the times I fed his skinny ass when he was growing up, all the pancake breakfasts and Saturday morning bacon, and now I'm supposed to take diet? Advice from someone whose idea of cooking is reheating takeout containers? Just trying to help, she added with that fake smile she practiced for her Instagram photos. That's when I knew this situation wasn't going to improve on its own. When someone starts policing what you eat in your own kitchen, they're not trying to help. They're establishing dominance. A few days later, I'm at Home Depot picking up some caulk for the bathroom when I run into Vernon Thompson, my old crew supervisor from the Mesa project. Guy took one look at me and said, "Gerald, you look like hell. What's going on, brother?" Vernon and I had worked together for 15 years. We'd built half the strip malls in East Phoenix, survived the recession of '08 when construction work dried up, celebrated when we finally got that big casino contract that kept us busy for 2 years straight. He could read me like a blueprint. I almost told him everything right there between the lumber aisles. Almost let it all spill out. How Patricia had taken over my house, thrown away my memories, made me feel like a stranger in my own home. But old habits die hard. In construction, you handle your own problems. You don't air your dirty laundry in public. "Just adjusting to retirement," I said, hefting the caulk tube like it was the most important thing in the world. Vernon studied me the way he used to study job site problems, looking for structural issues that weren't obvious at first glance. "Man, you earned your piece. 32 years running crews, dealing with contractors and building inspectors and weather delays. You should be fishing down at Roosevelt Lake, not looking like someone's beating you down." He wasn't wrong. I was getting beaten down, systematically and deliberately in my own house, by someone who acted like I was the problem instead of the solution. Someone who seemed to forget that, without my generosity, she'd be living in some apartment complex instead of a 2,400 square foot house with a pool and a 3-car garage. "You need anything?" You call me, Vernon said, squeezing my shoulder. I mean it. We take care of our own. I nodded, thanked him, went home to a house that felt less like home every day. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Patricia cornered me in the living room. She'd completely redecorated without asking. Gone was the leather furniture I'd bought with my first bonus check as crew supervisor. Gone was the oak coffee table I'd built myself in the garage one weekend when Leonard was maybe 10 years old. Everything was white and gray now, sterile as a hospital waiting room. We're doing things differently this year, she announced, like she was the CEO of Thanksgiving Corporation. Modern, not like the old ways. I was thinking I'd make the turkey like I always do, I said. Got my mother's recipe. Been using it for 40 years. Patricia laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Maybe let people who actually cook make decisions, Gerald. That smile of hers wasn't warm. It was the smile you give someone you're about to fire. The kind contractors use right before they tell you the job's going to someone else. I'm sure you have other contributions you can make. Other contributions. Translation: stay out of the way and don't embarrass us in front of the guests. Leonard walked by during this conversation, heard every word, and just kept walking toward the garage. Didn't say a word, didn't even slow down. 5 years of this, and he still couldn't find his backbone. That night, I pulled out the deed transfer papers I'd signed 5 years ago, started reading the fine print I'd trusted my lawyer to handle properly. In construction, you learn the hard way to read every contract, every change order, every warranty clause. But this was family business, so I'd been lazy. I'd trusted. Big mistake. Found exactly what I was looking for in Section 7, Paragraph 3. Lifetime residence rights, irrevocable, except in cases of gross ingratitude or a documented abuse by the residing party. Gross ingratitude. I took a picture of that section with my phone, saved it in a folder labeled Legal Documents. See, in construction, you learn to document everything, every conversation with the building inspector, every change the architect makes, every time a subcontractor promises something they can't deliver. Paper trail saves your ass when things go sideways, and things always go sideways eventually. The papers went back in the file box, but something had shifted in my head, the same feeling I used to get walking onto a job site where the previous contractor had screwed everything up and walked away. Time to assess the damage and figure out how to fix this mess. By Monday before Thanksgiving, Patricia was planning her big dinner party. She was in the kitchen, my kitchen, making lists and talking on the phone like she was organizing a campaign event. My friend Nancy is coming, she announced to Leonard, loud enough for me to hear from the living room. She just went through a messy divorce and needs company, plus her daughter Michelle. And I invited the Parkers from down the street. There'll be 7 of us. 7 witnesses, I thought. Perfect. Leonard nodded from behind his laptop. That's nice of you, honey. Nice of us, he should have said. But he didn't. Never did. Gerald, Patricia called out, making sure I heard. You can just be yourself, I guess. Translation: sit there, shut up, and don't embarrass us while I show off in front of my friends. Sure, I said, walking into the kitchen. Whatever works. She was standing by the granite countertop I'd helped install 3 years ago, back when I thought we were building something together as a family. Her expression said she'd already won some kind of victory I didn't even know we were fighting. Wednesday, I made the grocery run, loaded up with everything for a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. 23-pound turkey, russet potatoes for mashing, fresh cranberries for sauce, ingredients for cornbread stuffing the way my mother taught me when I was Leonard's age. At checkout, the teenage cashier made small talk about holiday plans. Big family dinner tomorrow, I said, bagging the groceries myself, because that's what you do when you've worked with your hands your whole life. Sounds wonderful. Must be nice having everyone together. It'll be memorable, I told her, one way or another. The kid laughed like it made a joke. I wasn't joking. Back home, I unloaded groceries while Patricia examined my purchases like she was a health inspector finding violations. You bought a turkey? She asked, like I'd brought home roadkill. I was going to order something pre-cooked from Whole Foods, something more refined. I'll handle the turkey, I said. Been doing it for 40 years. She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to reconsider. Maybe she realized arguing over turkey preparation made her look petty in front of Leonard, Or maybe she just didn't care enough to fight about. It's hard to tell with Patricia. Everything was strategic, calculated to make her look good and me look like the problem. That evening, I sat in my bedroom, the only room in the house that still felt like mine, and went through those wedding photos I'd rescued from the trash. One picture held my attention. Sarah and me on our 20th anniversary, standing in front of this same house the day we paid off the mortgage. We looked so proud, so sure we'd built something that would last. I placed the photos carefully in my nightstand drawer and started planning. Thursday morning, I was up at 5 a.m. prepping that turkey. Patricia came downstairs around 9, already dressed like she was heading to some kind of photo shoot. Hair perfect, makeup done, wearing one of those outfits that probably cost more than I used to make in a week back when I was starting out in construction. "Try not to dry it out," she said, watching me rub seasoning under the skin the way my mother had taught me 50 years ago. "It'll be perfect," I said. Not defensive, not argumentative, just stating a fact. When you've cooked Thanksgiving dinner for your family for 4 decades, you know what you're doing. The guests started arriving at 4 p.m. sharp. Nancy Williams, Patricia's divorce survivor friend, showed up first with her daughter Michelle. Then came the Parkers from down the street. Nice couple, probably didn't know what they were walking into. By 4:30, we had 7 people in my dining room, sitting around the table I'd bought when Leonard graduated high school. Patricia made the introductions like she was hosting some kind of charity event. "And this is Gerald," she said when she got to me, like I was the hired help who might need explaining. "Thank you, Gerald, for letting us use your kitchen in our house." Emphasis on our house. First shot fired, right in front of everyone. I caught the slight pause from Nancy, the way Michelle's eyebrows went up, just a fraction. Even strangers could hear the edge in that comment. The dinner itself was perfect. Turkey carved clean, potatoes creamy, stuffing seasoned just right. Everything I'd been making for decades, everything Patricia claimed she could do better. But nobody was commenting on the food quality. They were too busy navigating the tension you could cut with a carving knife. For the first hour, conversation stayed safe. Nancy talked about her new job. Michelle mentioned college applications. The Parkers shared stories about their recent trip to Sedona. Normal Thanksgiving dinner talk. I even got to contribute a few comments without Patricia shutting me down. Then Michelle asked about my construction days, and I started telling them about this 12-story office building we'd put up in downtown Phoenix back in '95. Trickiest foundation work I'd ever done. Had to dig down 30 feet through caliche hardpan, hit groundwater twice, had to redesign the whole support system. "Gerald," Patricia cut me off mid-sentence like I was some old drunk, boring people at a bar. "Nobody wants to hear stories from 30 years ago. We're trying to have a modern conversation." Dead silence around the table. Forks stopped moving. Nancy looked uncomfortable. Michelle actually looked interested in what I was saying, but now she just stared at her plate. "Actually, it sounds fascinating," said Mr. Parker, trying to be polite. "Trust me," Patricia said, louder now, making sure everyone understood who was in charge of conversations in this house. "We've heard them all before." Leonard sat there like a statue, staring at his phone, said nothing, did nothing. 5 years of this, and he still couldn't find the spine to defend his own father. The conversation shifted to Patricia's social media business. Suddenly she was animated, talking about her Instagram followers, her sponsored posts, how she was building her brand and connecting with her audience. Her hands moved as she spoke, wine glass sloshing slightly with each gesture. "That's real. Innovation," Nancy said, playing right into it. "Well, some of us adapt to change," Patricia said, glancing directly at me. "Others cling to the past like it's some kind of security blanket." The wine was flowing pretty freely by then. Patricia was on her 4th glass when she really started getting comfortable with her audience. "You know what?" she said, standing up slightly, swaying just enough to show the alcohol was working. "Gerald, you're 58 now, right? That's the age most people start thinking about downsizing, moving somewhere more appropriate." "More appropriate for what?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Your situation, single man, older, living on a fixed income." She gestured around the room like she was showing off property she owned. "This house is perfect for a young family. 3 bedrooms, well, really only 2 bedrooms available for actual family use, since one is occupied." She meant my bedroom, the room where I slept in the house I'd given them out of the goodness of my heart. Nancy jumped right in, either too drunk or too tactless to stay neutral. My parents moved to a senior community at 62. They said it was liberating. No more worrying about maintenance, no more feeling like they were getting in anyone's way. Getting in anyone's way. The message was crystal clear to everyone at that table. This house needs young energy, Patricia continued, emboldened by Nancy's support. It needs people who can really utilize the space, who can make it productive instead of just existing in it. I carved another piece of turkey, chewed slowly, let her keep talking. In construction, you learn to let the other guy dig his own hole before you point out how deep he's gotten. Let's be honest about the real issue here, Patricia said, setting down her wine glass with more force than necessary. The base clinked against the plate beneath it. When was the last time anyone actually needed you, Gerald? When was the last time you mattered to anyone? The table went completely quiet. Even the Parkers, who barely knew us, looked uncomfortable. Michelle stared at her hands. Nancy's mouth fell open slightly. Then Patricia asked the question that sealed her fate. How's it feel to be the man everyone hates? That's when I smiled. Not a friendly smile, not the kind you give to family. The smile you give someone when you know something they don't. The kind I used to give contractors right before I pointed out the fatal flaw in their bid. I don't know, Patricia, I said, standing up slowly from my chair, but I can tell you something I do know. I paused, let the silence build, let everyone at that table wonder what was coming next. I know how it feels to realize that, starting today, you are homeless. Nancy let out a nervous laugh, thinking it was some kind of comeback joke. Patricia's face went from smug to confused in about 2 seconds. What are you talking about? You heard me. The smile was gone now, just cold facts. 5 years ago, I gave Leonard this house, but there were conditions in the deed that you apparently never bothered to read. Leonard stood up fast, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. He'd refinished myself. Dad, what are you talking about? Arizona law allows gift revocation in cases of gross ingratitude from the recipient, I said, looking straight at Patricia. And thanks for providing witnesses tonight. Their statements will be very useful in court. The guests started grabbing purses and making excuses about needing to leave early. Patricia was screaming now, wine and rage mixing together in her voice. This is insane! You can't just take our house because I hurt your feelings. It's not your house, I said quietly. It never was. I gave you a gift with conditions. Tonight, you showed me exactly what that gift meant to you. I walked to my bedroom, closed the door, and for the first time in 5 years, I locked it. Behind me, I could hear Patricia crying, Leonard trying to calm her down, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I sat on the edge of my bed and felt something I hadn't experienced in 5 years. Pure, clean relief. Next morning, I called Harold Bennett, the best real estate attorney in Phoenix. I'd built his office building back in '98, and he owed me a favor. More importantly, he was good at his job. Gerald, he said after I explained the situation, gift revocation for gross ingratitude. Don't see many of these, but you've got a solid case here. I told him everything, every insult, every witness from Thanksgiving, the systematic pattern of disrespect over 5 years. They'll hire their own lawyer, Harold warned. Try to argue the gift was absolute, that you can't impose conditions retroactively. Let them argue, I said. I've got documentation going back 5 years. Harold smiled. 32 years in construction teaches you to keep good records, doesn't it? We filed the petition that Monday. Patricia and Leonard had 60 days from official notice to find somewhere else to live. Court hearing was set for January 15th. The house became a war zone after that. They stayed in their bedroom or left entirely. We didn't speak, didn't make eye contact. Just existed in the same space like opposing armies waiting for battle. By December, Patricia had hired Susan Mitchell with her parents' money, $8,500 retainer Harold told me about. She's good, he said, but she's working with weak material. That's when I discovered Patricia's social media campaign. She'd posted on Instagram and Facebook, painting herself as the victim of a cruel father-in-law stealing our home. The comments were predictable: outrage, sympathy, suggestions for family counseling. I forwarded everything to Harold. Document it all, he said, but don't respond publicly. Let her words speak for themselves. But I did more than document. I started going through 5 years of financial records, using the same systematic approach I'd used for construction. Project accounting. Found something interesting. Patricia's social media business was pulling in serious money. Money she wasn't reporting to the IRS. I created an anonymous email account, gathered screenshots of her sponsored posts, estimated her income based on follower counts and engagement rates, and filed a tip with the IRS. The kind of detailed documentation that makes investigators happy. The court hearing was January 15th. Judge Morrison had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings based on evidence, not emotions. Harold presented our case methodically, the deed with its revocation clause, timeline of incidents. Then he called the witnesses. Nancy took the stand first, uncomfortable, but bound by oath to tell the truth. Did Mrs. Patricia Hoffman make disparaging comments about Mr. Gerald Hoffman that evening? Harold asked. Families argue sometimes, she started. Please answer the question. Did she make disparaging comments? Nancy hesitated. Yes. Can you describe the final question she asked him? Nancy's voice went quiet. She asked him how it felt to be someone everyone hated. You could hear people gasp in the courtroom. Michelle testified next, brief but devastating. Was Mr. Hoffman treated with respect in his own home? Harold asked. No, absolutely not. Did anyone defend him when he was being insulted? Michelle glanced at Leonard sitting in the gallery. No, his son stayed quiet the whole time. Judge Morrison reviewed everything, documents, testimony, the systematic pattern of disrespect. I've heard testimony establishing clear gross ingratitude, she finally ruled. However, Arizona law requires fair compensation for legitimate improvements made to the property. She ordered an appraisal. It came back at $18,000 in documented improvements: kitchen cabinets, paint, water heater. Patricia had tried to claim $75,000, but the appraiser found most of her renovations were either normal maintenance or inflated estimates. I wrote the check for $18,000 that same day. Fair was fair. Started looking for a buyer immediately. Found one in 3 days. Cash offer at full asking price. July 1st, Patricia and Leonard moved out to a studio apartment in Tempe. 400 square feet for $1,650 a month, from a whole house to a closet. The IRS audit hit Patricia in August. $15,000 in back taxes and penalties. Her social media income dried up when the tax scandal broke. Nobody wants to sponsor someone under federal investigation. Leonard filed for divorce in September. Today, I'm sitting on the back patio of my new place in Scottsdale. 2 bedrooms, paid cash, completely mine. House sold for $385,000. After Harold's fees and the improvement payment, I walked away with $358,500. Used it to buy this place outright. No mortgage, no payments, no Patricia. Vernon stops by every few weeks. You did the right thing, he always says. Maybe I did. Maybe I just got tired of being disrespected in my own home by someone who forgot where her roof came from. Either way, I sleep good at night. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no apologizing for existing. I'm 58 years old. I've got my health, my dignity, and a house that's truly mine. That's worth more than any family dinner where I'm treated like the help. Some people might say I was harsh, but I learned something in 32 years of construction. When the foundation's rotten, you don't paint over it and hope for the best. You tear it down and start over. Sometimes the biggest favor you can do for someone is to stop letting them walk all over you. It teaches them what respect actually costs. I spent 32 years building things that lasted. Turns out the most important thing I ever built was the backbone to tear down what wasn't working.